This is a tutorial on how to loom knit crocodile stitch slippers or scalloped stitch slippers. And I'm going to kind of go through how these work on all of the CinDWood looms for the booties. First of all, I would suggest whoever's foot or person's foot that you're making, that you get a foot shape. And I'm using card paper. I would suggest cardboard if you want to put a leather bottom on so that you can actually hold it in place where it needs to be to put a leather bottom on. But my suggestion is don't just trace it out, you need the weight put on it. So you need them to put weight on their foot and trace it out and then cut it, and so you have a mold. And I'll explain the importance of this mold. Next, you're going to find that I'm going to go between this colorful yarn and this yarn here as a way to kind of show you how to go through this a little faster, as well as showing the importance when you use this colorful yarn, because I'm going to show you how to do a Kitchener cast on. And the person who figured it out was Brenda Myers, and she has used it with her duck pattern, and I find it's great for putting on the toes for the booties. And the Kitchener cast on is actually fairly easy to get set up. The hard part is tightening it. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and we're going to start with the toe and work our way up to the crocodile stitch. Now the concept I'm going here is that every single loom, you take the pegs, you divide them in half. And this works no matter what, you divide them in half. Okay, I'm going to be working with the 30 peg half gauge and the 24 peg half gauge, but I have worked with the 18 peg half gauge. All the even pegs is another great thing that they've changed to even pegs, is you can easily divide them in half. And when you divide them in half, you want to add a marker on one for this half and a marker on this for this half, so that you know where the split exists. And the reason being is what you're going to need to keep up with is where is your bottom and where is your top, because you're doing a rib stitch texture on the bottom and you're keeping with a knit texture on the top. Now I'm going to be using a flat knit, but you can use the traditional knit or a U knit or a U wrap. You can do an E wrap, but it will double in size. Now what I've done is I'm using a bulky yarn here, and I'm only using one strand. With this one I'm using a worsted yarn, but I'm using 2 strands. And I will tell you right now, with the softer, higher end yarn for this is Heartland, Lions brand Heartland yarn, and I believe this is Bernat. I can't remember which kind, but it's taken a whole skein to do one, and it's taken a whole skein to do one. So if you're going to make the crocodile stitch and you're going to go a little bit more expensive on your yarn, it's typically going to take 2 skeins. I'll try to put up in my write-up exactly how much you're looking at for one booty, but I would say for this type, get 2. And the reason being is the crocodile stitch eats up a lot of yarn. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to get started, and even though we'll be going back and forth between the two, it's okay. We're working in sections, and it's going to vary depending on the mold you're using, the loom you're using, but everything is done in halves, and I'm going to break it down. So we're going to go in a general and as a guide of how these techniques are done. So I'm going to start off with the Kitchener cast on. And what you're going to do is you're going to have your starting point of where you want to keep up with the opposite side of you. And you have your markers showing the other half. What you're doing, once you point this out, you will have to keep in mind that the pegs from here back, this is the facing, and what's behind is back. So this is front and this is back. And the way you want to keep up with that is important because of the way you wrap. So you're going to put your starting strand in the center, and every wrap should be coming forward and back, forward and back. And you're going to go back and forth all the way to the other side, making sure you come in front of the peg, then go back, go in front of the next peg on the opposite side and back, go to the opposite side, front and back, opposite side, front and back, front and back. You want to make sure that you get every single peg, and you're going front to back. And it'll get more difficult when you narrow back down again. So front to back, 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 front to back. Okay. That keeps it all in the same direction and same movement. It is important to do that all the way to the other side. Now, we're going to flip it over to our starting point, and we're going to knit. And as I said, I'm going to be flat knit on this whole thing, but you can do a U wrap, I think it's called, or a U knit, or a traditional knit. It's just going to vary slightly, but not horribly. An E-wrap will vary a lot. So I'm going to go all the way around and knit, flat knit. And the reason I'm using the color for this, and I would suggest on this project as a first time to use a multicolored yarn, because it will help you find where your original stitches are on your Crocodile Stitch, and it will also help you go about making sure what strings to pull when you go to tighten your Kitchener cast on. Now yes, to do the Kitchener cast on, you are using a lot of yarn to do it, but it is well worth the toe area and the way it looks and feels. Plus you don't have to sew anything up at the end. Okay, almost around to the other side. One more. Now you've set up your Kitchener cast on. It's done. So your cast on is set up. At this point, we're going to start. And we're going to do a complete row of knit. Okay, at this point we're going to start working the toe area, and we're going to be doing short rows with wraps and turns. And this is where you're going to want to pick up your mold. And what you're wanting to find out is how many pegs you'll need for your toe area. And it looks like from going to the ball of the foot up that we're going to be needing 5 pegs. Because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's your narrowest part pretty much. So I'd say 5 pegs. 5 or 6. And that gives you the guide. So that means that you're going to have 5 pegs in the middle between wraps and turns with a single loop. So let's go ahead and get this started. I'm going to knit all the way around to my halfway point. And we're starting off with a knit because this is the top part of the toe area, which is where it can be a little confusing, but this is the top part of the toe area. Okay, now that we're at our halfway point, you're going to wrap and turn the next peg. And yes, it does overlap into the other half. That's okay. And then you're going to knit to the other side. And there's your ending point. So you're going to wrap and turn the next peg, which yes is going to the other side. It's okay. And then you're going to knit all the way to the other side until just before the last wrap and turn. There's your last wrap and turn. You're stopping just before it. Wrap and turn, and repeat this until you are down to 5 single loops in between wraps and turns. So I'm going to suggest you pause the video and complete your wraps and turns until you have 5 pegs that have single loops in between your wrap and turn. Just go ahead and pause the video and complete up to that point, and then we'll go from there. Okay, I've completed it to where I have 5 pegs, the single loops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then there's our wrap and turns on both sides. And so now what we're going to do is start adding our wrap and turns back in. And this is where we're going to be doing the bottom of the toe. So here's where we're going to start doing the knit, purl, knit, purl. So at this point you're going to knit over and then get your last wrap and turn back in, tossing both loops. Now you're going to purl your way back. And I believe this is a horizontal rib stitch rather than a vertical. So every other row is going to be a purl. And every other row is going to be a knit, which creates a nice beautiful ridge area. And then your next wrap and turn, you're going to purl both together. And then go back the direction you came and knit. And add the next wrap and turn in. And then purl and continue this until you are down to no wraps and turns. So go ahead and pause the video and complete this section, and then we will go on from there, and I'll show you how to continue. Let's go ahead and pause the video and complete removing your wrap and turns, which is completing your toe area. Okay, I've just added my last wrap and turn back in. Now I'm going to go back to my starting point, so I'm going to purl my way back. And at this point, we're going to go back to our halfway point on our purl and knit rib stitch on the bottom. Again, this works the same way on all of the looms. It's just going to vary with your actual mold that you're going to be working from. I don't know about you, but I love a custom fit booty that feels more like a glove. Okay. We're going to stop right at our end point right here. At this point, we're going to be working on the actual solid part of the foot, which is through here. And because this is actually a smaller size, this is for my mother. And this one is actually based off of my foot, which I have a larger foot than my mother. And so I did 30 rows personally here, and I wear anywhere from a 8.5 to 9, and my mother wears from anywhere from a 7 to 7.5, so her foot's a lot smaller, and I only did 24 rows in here. Again, this will vary on your mold that you're working with. And to give you a little idea as to how this is going to work, you take your mold and you stick it up in there, and you feel for where it's at the toe and pull back. And you'll see that there's about, I'd say, 3 or 4 inches from the heel area. So 3 or 4 inches from the heel area, then you know to start on the heel. And for me, it's like right where my arch is through here. So it's going to be in this zone here. So you're going to go about 3 inches, or if you're working on a smaller foot, 2 inches to 1 inches. You'll kind of get an idea of where you have your actual heel. It's going to be in here, where your actual heel area is going to be in here. So, and if you want, you can actually do a footprint, and that'll tell you right where that area is too, if you need more help with it. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to show you how to go about doing the base of the actual booty. And what you're going to do is you're going to knit a row, and then after you knit a row, you're going to knit 15 to your halfway point, and then you're going to purl 15. And this is going to be your 2 rows setup. So you're going to knit a row, and then you're going to knit 15 and purl 15. Knit a row, knit 15, purl 15. The great thing is the guides will tell you when to switch. See? I know to switch right there. And it'll make it a lot faster. Now, I wouldn't suggest trying to tighten up your Kitchener cast on until you've done probably about, I'd say 15 rows. 10 to 15 rows of this, of the knit a row, knit 15, purl 15 row. So that's your 2-row setup. So next you're going to knit a row, and then you're going to repeat this, knit 15, purl 15, and you're going to continue that for however long a foot you need. And so what we'll do is we'll pause the video and you can go from there. And then I'm going to show you how to go ahead and do the heel on the other loom, because it really isn't imperative that you actually get that tightened done, because this is your ridge right here. You can still stick your mold up in that ridge to get a guide. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do the heel, but if you want, go ahead and pause the video and complete the base of your foot. Okay, now we're going to work our heel. We're going to be working the same section, which should be the left half, and we're going to work it pretty much exactly the same we did the toe, but we're going to do it in reverse. We're going to do the rib stitch first and then do straight knit to finish the heel. So what I have done, let's see, is completed with my last row being a knit 15, purl 15. Now I'm going to take and wrap and turn the next peg, which does go over on the other half, it's okay. And I'm going to knit over to my halfway point on the other side. Now here's a little trick, sometimes this works, but all feet are different. I found that however many times you went down on the toe as your wrap and turns and your single loop pegs in between is usually the same for your heel. But some people have a fatter toe area and a narrow heel, or a more even foot all the way from front to back. As I said, it's going to vary depending on the type of foot you have. So you're going to wrap and turn, and now you're going to purl your way back. So the thing to keep in mind with your heel is that you're going to knit from right to left, and you're going to purl from left to right. You're going to stop just before that last wrap and turn. There's your last wrap and turn. You're stopping just before it so that you can wrap and turn and knit your way back. Just before the last wrap and turn the next peg, purl your way back. So you'll want to continue this process until you're down to however many pegs you will need as single pegs with single loops in between your wrap and turns. And I'll show you how to figure that up. Here's my mold. Place it in there. And it looks like it's basically 5. From there to there. I could do 4, but I'll do 5. So I'm going to do 5. So I want 5 pegs with single loops in between my wrap and turns. So at this point, go ahead and pause the video and continue to wrap and turn, doing knit purl, knit, purl until you're down to 5 single loops, or however many loops you need in between your wrap and turns. Let's go ahead and pause the video and complete that. Okay, we have our 5 single loops in between our wrap and turns, as you can see. So there's your 5 single loops. And at this point, we're going to do no more rib stitch, where everything we do from this point out is going to be knit. So what you're going to do is you're going to knit 5 and then add a wrap and turn peg back in. So this is where you start adding your wrap and turn pegs back in, each row at a time, back and forth. So go ahead and pause the video and complete your heel area, and then we will go from there to semi-prep for doing the crocodile stitch. Go ahead and pause the video and complete your heel, and then we'll go from there. Okay, there's the whole bottom of our booty right there, and we've started working on the ankle. So at this point, I finished on my actual starting peg, and what I'm going to do is knit around back to my end point, and from there I'm going to do 5 rows of knit. So I'm going to go ahead and knit all the way around to my end point. To where I have my original ending and starting point. At this point, you're going to go around and knit full rows. So you're going to do 5 rows for the larger sizes, and that's with the 30 and the 24 peg loom. I would suggest anywhere from 3 to 4 rows on the smaller looms for the anywhere from child to toddler to infant. So go ahead and pause the video and complete this section, and the next section we're going to get started on is the crocodile stitch, and I'm going to switch back to the colorful loom so that you can see how the original, picking up the original loop works. You can see it easier because there's a drastic color difference, and that's the reason why I would suggest doing this as your first time until you get used to the specialty cast on and the crocodile stitch, using colorful yarn so that you can see how to go about this. So what I'm going to do is next show you how to tighten your Kitchener stitch, and actually you can do that after you finish the solid part, but I have to get the solid part done on here so that it's easier to show you how to do this and the tightening and the technique of it. So go ahead and pause the video and complete this section up to the point I've got it, and I'm going to show you how to tighten your Kitchener cast on. Okay, I have gotten this booty up to the point I did the other one, and I'm going to show you how to tighten your cast on of your Kitchener stitch. So what you want to do when you're tightening your Kitchener stitch cast on, you want to find your tail. Your tail is your end point, so you don't want to start there. So wherever your tail is, you go to the opposite side, which is over here, and you're going to start here. Now keep in mind, this is like a sound wave. when you're going to tighten it. So first you got to find out where your end one is, and I have a feeling it's the pink one here. So once you find your end one, then you start following the line. So it's going to go up first. So we've just done the up, then we're going to go down to the peak. We're going to go over to the next strand, and you're going to tighten it. Then you're going to go up. Then you're going to go up. There's your blue strand. You're going to pull it. Then you're going to go down and dip. What you see is you're still your blue strand. That's the benefit of the color. Okay. So now we've done our dip. We're going to go up and do the peak. We're going to go down to do the valley. Up to do the peak, and you just follow that green. Down to do the valley. Up to do the peak, and as you can see, it's starting to get into orange. Down into the valley. There's the orange. As I said, this is easier to start with a colored yarn that has multicolors. Then we're going to go to the peak and pull that. Then we're going to go to the valley, as you can see here, and pull that. Go back up to the peak, pull. Go to the valley, your red one, and you're going to pull. Go to the peak on the next one, pull. Go to the valley, pull. Go to the peak, and I'll warn you, we're starting to get into a challenging area, which is our finishing area. And then valley. And then remember, we're going to do a peak. And as you can see, it's starting to get harder to see. So the last couple will be difficult. Okay, and we need to hit a valley, which should be that one. You can kind of see the color change going on there. Just remember your peaks and valleys, alternating between. Okay. Then we have our last peak, which should be here. We're going to pull that through. As I said, the last ones are going to be your most difficult. And the best way to figure that out is to, when you have the color thing, you can kind of follow it. But again, the last little bits are your most difficult for tightening. So there you have it. Your Kitchener cast on. You can't even see it's there. Awesome stuff. Love it. Thank you, Brenda. Okay. Now that we've done that, we're going to get started on our crocodile stitch. And while I have shown an example of how to do the crocodile stitch in general in sets of 3, we're going to continue with that set of 3, but the advantage here is because we're using a multicolored yarn, you're going to be able to see where your original loops are a lot easier. So starting off with the first 3 pegs, you're going to knit 3 pegs for 4 rows. So there's 1, and here's 2, 3, 4, then 2, then 1, then 2, then 3 for 4 rows. So here's row 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, we've just completed our first scale. We want to bring our original loops back in. So I like to push that excess short rows down so I can help myself find my original loops. So as you can see, there is your connector, and how I've always done it is pick that one up. So there's your connector right there, that's a red, and there's your yellow. So what you want to do is you want to go in and pick up the yellow loops. See, they naturally gradiate to where you can easily see them to pull them back on. There. Ta-da! Okay, let's do one more, and I'll show you how that works. So let's do another one. So you can kind of see how that works with the gradient color changes, which helps you see things a little easier. Two, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now on the smaller looms, when you start going into like toddler and smaller, you'll stick with the 3 pegs, but you'll only want to do 3 rows instead of 4, and you do the 2, 1, 2, and then back to 3, and it ends you up in the same spot, just so you know if you're wanting to do the smaller size. Okay, so we're going to shove our extra short rows down in there. Then we're going to follow our connector yarn, and we're going to see that yellow right there. So we're going to pick up that yellow right at the base of our connector yarn, and we're going to put it back on, just like that. And as you can see, that's a lot easier to see with the multicolored yarn. So go ahead and finish the row, because this is a 24 peg loom, you should, doing an increment of 3, you should have 8 scales. So go ahead and complete the rest all the way around to your end point. Once you do that, then you're going to knit for 5 rows, and then I'll show you how to stagger it. So go ahead and pause the video and complete your scale row, and then complete 5 rows of knit, and then we'll get back to how to stagger your scales. Okay, we have just completed our first row of Crocodile Stitch with the 5 rows of knit in between, and now I need to show you how to go in and stagger your crocodile scales. So to do that, knit 1. The next 3 is your first scale on this row. So 3 for 4 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 1, 2, 3 for 4 rows. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And I'll shove that in there, and we're going to find our loops that we want to bring up. So go to the next unused peg, follow that orange back, and it looks like we're going to be picking up red. So we're going to pick up the red ones and put them back on there. Okay. At this point, you're going to do 3, 3, 3 all the way around, and your last one should definitely be overlapping your ending and starting point with your last scale on this row. After that, you'll want to do, again, after you get your scales done, you'll want to do 5 rows of knit, and then you'll go to the beginning again and be starting from your starting point to doing the first row of scales. So you go to the first row of scales, then you go to this row that I just showed you how to start, then you go back to the first row of scales, so it alternates back and forth. For the smaller adult size, I did 3 rows. So there's 1, 2, 3. For the larger size adult, I did 4 rows. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can either do 4 rows or 3 rows. When it comes to the toddler and infant sizes, I would suggest 3 rows. Again, you're shortening, you're not doing 3 pegs for 4 rows, you're doing 3 pegs for 3 rows, which shortens the scale some. And so that'll be helpful. And when you shorten your scales, instead of doing 5 rows in between, it's going to be 4 rows in between. So you're shortening it that way too. Otherwise, once you decide how many rows of scales you'll want to do, you'll naturally knit a row to get all those 2 loops together, and then after that you're going to purl. After you purl, you're going to cast off, but don't cast off tight. Cast off as loosely as you can, but don't do a super stretchy loose cast off. Just don't do it tight, because keep in mind your foot's got to go through there. So, you know, just don't work it tight. Work it nice and easy, a little looser, and you should be fine with that cast off. I do, and it's perfect. I've not had any problems being able to get my foot in and out of these. So that's how you finish it. You do a purl and then you cast off, and you do it nice and easy and loose, and you have it. So, and then you'll just want to tuck that in, your little tail from your Kitchener cast on in. And so, yeah, that's it. That's how you go about making the Crocodile Stitch booties. So, I'll make sure that it includes the smaller sizes, but again, this is going to be mostly variables on your actual foot size you're working on. And again, I would suggest a actual foot. I call it a mold, but you know, whatever you want to call it, you need a foot guide to go by, with heel and the width of the ball of the foot and that kind of thing. So otherwise, that's how it's done. You're done.